Welcome back to Super Recaps. Today I will show you an adventure drama movie from 2012 called Hugo. The movie is set in the 1930s in Paris. It's about a boy called Hugo who lives within the walls of the Gare Montparnasse train station. His daily routine consists of observing different people through the opening in the huge clock. He sees Officer Gustave walking with his dog. The inspector needs leg braces to walk properly, and yet he is always running around and is constantly trying to catch thieves, particularly the young ones, so that he can put them in an orphan. The other people that Hugo notices: a bookstore owner called Labis, a florist named Lisette whom Gustave is infatuated with, and lastly, the toy maker Georges and his grand otter Isabelle. One day, when Hugo is looking through the clock, he sees Georges sleeping on his desk, so Hugo sneaks into his shop and quietly tries to steal a clockwork mouse, but it turns out that Georges was only acting, and he quickly catches Hugo as soon as he touches the mouse. Georges realized that Hugo had been stealing parts from his shop, and so he asks the boy to empty his pocket. Hugo then reluctantly pulls out all the stolen clockwork components that he took out from various toys and a little notebook as well. When Georges checks out the notebook, he sees all the notes Hugo has taken about clockwork and is amazed, but then he comes across an illustration of an automaton and becomes terrified. He then accuses Hugo of being a thief and stealing the notebook from someone even when Hugo says he didn't steal it. He also orders Hugo to get out of his shop, but Hugo doesn't want to leave without his notebook. When Georges starts yelling, Gustave hears the word thief and starts running to capture Hugo. The chase scene goes on for a while, and Hugo finally escapes by climbing on top of the platform when Gustave's leg brace gets stuck on the train. Hugo then returns to the walls of the train station, where he maintains the clocks and continues to observe people. When Georges is about to go home at night, Hugo approaches him again and pleads to get his notebook back, but Georges refuses and says that he will burn it. Hugo is persistent and even follows Georges to his house, but Georges simply goes in, leaving Hugo outside. When Hugo notices Isabelle at the window, he gestures for her to come down, and when she comes, Hugo explains the whole story to her. And since Isabelle loves adventures, she agrees to retrieve the notebook. Then, Hugo decides to leave before Georges notices. When he goes back home, Hugo looks at the automaton and cries silently. We are then shown a flashback of Hugo's widowed father, Mr. Cabret, who was a clockwork and used to work in a museum. He had discovered this automaton abandoned in the attic of the museum, so he brought it home. And while he taught Hugo the clockworking, they both also tried hard to repair the automaton. But it was pointless, as the heart key that would make it work was missing. Then one day, there was a fire in their house which killed Hugo's father. After that, Hugo had no choice but to live with his alcoholic uncle, and the only things he was able to take from his house were the automaton and the notebook that contained their notes on it. Claude refused to send Hugo to school, and instead, he showed him how to maintain the station clocks, which was Claude's job. Soon after, Claude vanished, but Hugo continued to maintain the clocks so that he would be able to freely live in Claude's room without people suspecting anything. Now that he was all alone, Hugo had to steal food to survive without being spotted by Gustave, otherwise he'd be sent to the orphan. Back in the present, Hugo goes to see Georges once again, but this time, Georges shows him the ashes of his burnt notebook. Hugo is devastated and leaves in tears. While he's running, he bumps into Isabelle and she says that she needs to tell him something in secret. Then she takes him to the bookstore where they meet Labis. Finally, Isabelle informs him that her godfather was lying and that he didn't actually burn the notebook. She also describes how the notebook disturbed him to the point of crying and tells Hugo to try again and be very persistent. So as per her advice, Hugo returns to see Georges and says that he will not leave without his notebook. Hence, Georges gives him a test that requires Hugo to repair a clockwork mouse. Hugo works like an expert and repairs it very quickly. Georges is impressed by his skills, and he hires Hugo as an apprentice. From then on, Hugo starts working in the store as repayment for all the things he has stolen, and once Georges is satisfied, he will give Hugo back his notebook. During work, Georges trains him to do many things, like making clockwork devices and toys. Hugo is happy to learn all of it and quickly applies his new skill set and tries to repair the automaton, but it is futile as the automaton is still missing the heart key. Other than that, Hugo spends his spare time watching Gustave chase kids, and he also starts spending a lot of time with Isabelle. During their hangout, Isabel reveals that she's never watched a movie as her father won't allow her, so Hugo takes her to the cinema, and they are able to sneak in because Hugo lock picks the back door. Both of them really enjoy the movie and are fascinated by the scene where a man hangs from a clock, but sadly, they are noticed by the security and get kicked out before the movie ends. As they walk to the train station, Hugo talks about his dad and tells Isabel about the movies his dad used to show him. One of them was called A Trip to the Moon. He also ends up telling her that he lives within the walls of the train station. They eventually reach the train station, but Gustave stops them to question Hugo. To save him, Isabel lies and says that Hugo is just her idiot cousin from the countryside. However, Gustave's dog is suspicious and starts sniffing Hugo, but Isabel says that it's probably just the smell of her cat. Gustave is convinced and leaves them alone. Following that, Isabel requests to see Hugo's house in the walls, but he doesn't want to show her and tries to run away in the crowd. Isabel, who is unfamiliar with crowds, almost gets trampled by everyone. Fortunately, Hugo comes back in time to save her. This is when he notices that her necklace is actually the heart key, and because of that, Hugo agrees to show Isabel his house. When they reach there, Hugo asks if he can take her necklace for a moment, and he uses it to activate the automaton. It starts working, but the robot just makes a few nonsensical lines. Hugo is dissatisfied and starts crying. He had thought that if he fixed it, he would be able to get some secret message from his father. All of a sudden, the thing starts moving again and finishes its drone to reveal a scene from the movie A Trip to the Moon, signed by Georges Méliès, which turns out to be Isabel's godfather's full name. The children decide to visit Isabel's house to talk with George's wife Jean about the automaton and show her the artwork. When they tell her everything, Jean advises them to not get involved in the past as they are too young to even comprehend it. Just then, Georges enters the house, so Jean hides the children in her room. While in the room, Hugo searches for his notebook in the closet and spots a secret compartment with a box in, and because Isabel is taller, she gets on a chair and gets the box, but the chair breaks and the box drops to the ground. The lid opens and many beautiful drawings fly out, including one from A Trip to the Moon. At the same moment, Georges hears the noise and enters the room to check it out. He is horrified to see all of his work exposed like this and has a breakdown. He says that now he is nothing but a lowly and broke trader. He is also angry at Hugo for abusing his trust and calls him cruel. Hugo then goes back to the train station where he encounters Labis, who is holding some book. Labis sees that Hugo is interested in the book called Robin Hood Prescript, as he used to read it with his father in the past. And so, Labis believes that the book is meant for Hugo and gives it to him. While at the flower shop, Gustave attempts to strike up a conversation with Lisette, but he is embarrassed by his leg, which never recovered after the war. Lisette, on the other hand, does not belittle him. Instead, she admits that she also lost her brother during the war. She then gives Gustave some flowers to make him feel better. The following day, Labis informs Hugo and Isabel that the Film Academy library might have some useful information. When they go there, they discover a book called The Invention of Dreams, which recounts that Georges was, in fact, one of the first filmmakers in the industry, and he was extremely popular and successful. The book states that he made 500 films, but sadly he died in the war. As the kids continue to read, the book's author, René, suddenly appears, and he is ecstatic to learn that Georges is still alive. He leads them to his private collection, where he reveals that he's been a fan of Georges ever since he saw him on set as a kid. He then says that it's still a mystery why Georges abandoned filmmaking, and he also reveals that he has Georges' only film left from that time. Back at the train station, while Hugo maintains the clocks, he and Isabel try to come up with some sort of plan. Hugo believes that just like machines, people have a purpose too. So perhaps that's why Georges is always unhappy. It's because he has lost his purpose, and now it's their responsibility to help him get it back. After their discussion, Isabel kisses Hugo on the cheek and leaves. Hugo discovers the heart key on the railroad the next day and climbs down to retrieve it. Unaware that a train is approaching, the train drivers are unable to stop the train in time, and the train crashes into the station wall. Hugo then awakens, realizing it was just a dream, only to see that his body is transforming into an automaton, which is also a dream. The next day, Claude's corpse is discovered in the river, and he appears to have been dead for some time. The authorities alert Gustave, and he is now fixated on uncovering the person that has been keeping the clocks running till now. That evening, Hugo, and Renee brings George's film to his home, but Jean tells them to leave right away before George's hears them. However, when Renee realizes that she is an actress from some of George's movies, he compliments her skills and reveals that they have one of his movies. Jean is delighted by this and agrees to let them watch it in the living room since George's is asleep. When they play the movie, it turns out to be a trip to the moon, with some scenes in color as well. Jean reveals that they colored the film by hand painting each frame. At that moment, George's unexpectedly enters the living room after hearing some noise. He is shocked to see his own film playing on the projector. Jean convinces him by saying that avoiding the past has done nothing but made them miserable. This motivates George's to finally tell them the truth. He used to be a magician, and Jean was his assistant. He was so accomplished that he even had his own theater. He also enjoyed experimenting with machinery, and that's why he had a workshop in his theater, which is how the automaton was created. One day, when the Lumiere brothers released their first film, Georges was captivated by it, and that motivated him to make his camera out of scraps from the automaton. Even though it was risky, they decided to sell their theater to create their film studio, where they made some amazing movies. They enjoyed many years of success, but unfortunately, war occurred and caused them to become bankrupt. Georges was utterly devastated, and one day, in anger, he burnt down all the sets and costumes and even sold the films to some company that melted them and made shoes out of them. Georges then only had a small amount of money left, which he used to buy at the toy store. The one thing that he didn't want to destroy was the automaton, so he gave it to the local museum in hopes that it might find a new home. Georges now believes that the automaton was also destroyed in the fire when Mr. Cabret died, and that a happy ending can never happen in real life. Hugo, however, rushes back to his house to retrieve the automaton, but on his way there, he hides near a shop and hears Gustave discussing Claude's death. Hugo is then spotted by the shop owner's dog, which exposes his location to Gustave. He captures Hugo and locks him up in his office while he calls the orphan. He says that he wants to send Hugo there as it will be good for him and will teach him how to live without a family. And Gustave knows this because he grew up in an orphanage too. When Gustave has his back turned and is talking on the phone, Hugo Locke picks the door and sneaks out. He goes to hide in the walls. To avoid Gustave, Hugo takes inspiration from the movie he saw with Isabelle and climbs out while holding onto the clock. The trick works, and when Gustave enters the room, he doesn't find Hugo and thinks that he went somewhere else. As soon as he leaves, Hugo quickly takes the automaton and rushes out of the building. But before he can escape, Gustave catches him again, and the automaton falls on the railway track. Hugo jumps on the rails to get it back, not noticing that a train is coming. Just when the train is about to hit him, Gustave saves him in time. He then proceeds to drag Hugo to the orphanage, but luckily Georges shows up and says that Hugo is his family. Some weeks pass by, and Renee hosts a celebration to honor Georges, who is now a professor at the Film Academy. They've recovered some old photos and deteriorating films. After searching through various vaults, they have managed to find 80 of Georges' old films, which they showcase during the celebration. Before the movie ends, we see that Gustave is now dating Lisette, and he is also wearing a much superior clockwork-based leg brace, which was made by Hugo, who is busy charming all the guests with his magic trick. It appears that Isabelle has also discovered her passion for writing, and she intends to begin by writing about Hugo's life. Thanks for watching. To support the channel, make sure to subscribe and hit the like button and press the bell icon to get new video updates.